Hello and welcome to the Savage Movie Night podcast. Today we are continuing to talk all about the 1987 Paul Verhoeven classic Robocop. I'm your untalented hack trying to appeal to the mindless masses with my shtick and catchphrases host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is my looking forward to a future of driving through toxic waste monsters co-host, Kristen. Hi, Kristen.
Hey, Adam.
And of course, our show wouldn't be complete without our beginning to question the wisdom of confessing his villainous plan to a person who was always recording you while also calling someone else dumb for confessing their villainous plan to someone who was always recording, co-host Rob. Hi, Rob.
My head is spinning on that one. How you doing, Adam?
It'll make sense as we go through the plot.
Nice.
All right. So it is June. It is summertime. What are some of your guys' favorite summertime activities?
Well, I guess my summertime activities are kind of just what my every activity. I read all the time in the summertime. I like to read summer-themed books and watch summer-themed movies in some way. I always like to watch Jaws around 4th of July, that kind of thing. I don't swim that much anymore. You know, when you don't have your own swimming pool, you don't swim as often. But I will be going to Jamaica very soon, so I will get some beach time.
That'll be fun. Now, you said you watch Jaws every 4th of July. Have you only ever watched the first Jaws, or have you watched all the Jawses?
No, I haven't bothered with any of the others.
It's funny because one may come up later, one of the sequels, but I actually watched all 4 movies earlier this year for the first time. I'd seen one, obviously, many times. I think I'd maybe seen 2 at some point, but I'd never seen 3 and technically 4, but called The Revenge. And they are something. 2 isn't bad. It's enjoyable. It's obviously nowhere near as good as the original, but it's solid. 3, there is a cheese factor that can almost make it enjoyable. And 4 is completely awful, but also insane, which makes it almost enjoyable. But neither could qualify as good.
I watched a documentary called Sharksploitation on Shudder that's just talking about how the Jaws movie kind of stemmed a bunch of offshoots and a bunch of sequels and everything, and just talking about it. And there was some behind the scenes a bit of like what it took to make the other Jaws sequels and how a lot of the studio played a factor in why 3 and 4 just go off the rails because they wanted to, make money. They didn't care about a good story.
Yeah. But I mean, like each movie had, like all of them have interesting casts, especially like the 2 crappy sequels, like Dennis Quaid and Leah Thompson and Louis Gossett Jr. are all part of 3. And then 4 has Michael Caine in it, and Mario Van Peebles doing a Jamaican accent. I would, again, like we were talking about this yesterday in part 1, that I sometimes recommend things just for the curiosity factor and just so you can say you've actually seen them. So on that merit, I would say check them out. But
Nice. All this Shark Talk, you give me flashbacks a couple summers ago when I was swimming with sharks, a bunch of nurse sharks. It was like 50 of them.
Cool.
It was pretty awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and see, I was having flashbacks to Deep Blue Sea and LL Cool J singing about.
After watching the documentary, I really wanted to watch that one. I have it on hold for the library, so I'm gonna check that one out.
You've never seen it?
No.
Oh,
but after the documentary gave me so many.
Treat. It is. Yeah. It is deliciously cheesy bad.
That documentary gave me so many shark recommendations, both like cheesy and, ones that they claimed were actually good. But yeah, it was a very good documentary. But yeah, that's funny you brought up Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah, well, so who knows? Maybe one day soon we'll end up talking about it because it is very a talk-worthy movie. But one they might not have mentioned in the documentary that I know of from Red Letter Media's Best of the Worst. I have not watched it. I've just heard them talk about how insane it is called Shark Exorcist.
I think I might have heard of that one. I know about Velocipaster.
Yeah, yeah. Ben, my brother, loves
Yeah.
Velocipaster. Shark Exorcist is insane and creepy and weird and bad, and from all reports, uh, makes you feel awful for watching it. Like, because they watched it for like a Halloween episode, and then a few years later, um, they had another movie from that guy in another Halloween episode. And one of them goes, Donald Farmer, why do I know that name? And takes him a while to remember and then goes, oh God, why would we have something else from that sicko back on the show? So, if nothing else, Kristen, maybe check out the Best of the Worst episode with Shark Exorcist. And then maybe you don't have to actually watch the movie itself.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good way to get the. I like to watch people rant about stuff if I have no interest in seeing or consuming the content.
Well, I mean, like it's funny. It gets to a mix of their times. Like they're talking about movies I've actually seen, and sometimes I agree with them. Sometimes I'm like, no, I actually enjoyed that. Or, other times they'll inspire me to actually go watch it and see, what I think. Maybe because they think, they talk about it as like a fun kind of bad. Shark Exorcist. As much fun as it is listening to them talk about Donald Farmer movies, and they've done so not just in that second one, but they did a whole episode not too long ago on Donald Farmer movies. And as I don't have too much of a desire to watch Donald Farmer movies myself. I feel better having someone else do that. Rob, how about you?
Yeah, I live by the beach, so maybe a little bit more beach, and then I going out to the desert, and then also a lot of baseball. So that's what the summer is.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, for me, it's a couple trips. I'm going to go to Philly to see Wu-Tang Clan with my brother next month. And then it sounds like because my dad and his girlfriend are going to be renting a place up in Maine for part of the summer. And, they're going to have family and friends in and out of there. So my brother and I are probably going to go on up to Maine after Wu-Tang Clan. And then in August, I'm going to drive out to St. Louis to go see a couple concerts with one of my good friends. We're going to go see Coheed and Cambria and The Offspring. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, exciting summer.
Yeah. Now that we've talked about summer, the movie we're talking about today was a summer movie as well. And, in today's episode, we are going to learn how Robocop helped launch the X-Men, the animated series, what Italian Renaissance art history has to do with any of this, and most importantly, why is Robocop helping Sting? Sting the wrestler, not Sting the musician. Because today we are continuing to talk all about the 1987 Paul Verhoeven classic, Robocop. But first, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Jazzology with Willard Jenkins. Jazzology is a fun and challenging jazz trivia show where two contestants go head to head for a chance to win $100 and prove their jazz knowledge. Watch along and see if you know the answers. Want to prove you are a true jazzologist by appearing as a contestant on the show? Use the link in the description of any episode to sign up. New episodes air every other Saturday on the Savage Content YouTube channel, youtube.com/savagecontent. And all past episodes are available under the Live tab. Thanks to Jazzology for sponsoring today's episode. And now, back to the show. This is part 2 of our look at 1987's Robocop. If you haven't listened to part 1, I definitely recommend pausing this and checking that out. But in case you don't, or maybe you just need a refresher, here's a quick recap. Part 1, we learned about Paul Verhoeven and his early life and career. We also learned about how the script for Robocop came about, how Paul got involved, and the production itself. We then started talking about the movie and plot. In the movie, we are introduced to a near-future Detroit that is full of crime. The police are now run by a private company, Omni Consumer Products, OCP, and one of their top executives is Dick Jones, who is scheming to create an automated police officer to replace the humans. The first test is an embarrassing and bloody failure and happens in front of the head of the company, just simply referred to as the old man, not just in this movie, but in subsequent movies as well, played by Dan O'Hurley. Young, up-and-coming executive Bob Morton, played by Miguel Ferrer, steps in with an alternative program called Robocop that just needs a human subject. Alex Murphy, Peter Weller, a Detroit policeman, is transferred to one of the toughest precincts and partnered with Ann Lewis, Nancy Allen. He quickly learns about the pressure from OCP along with budget cuts that is pushing the cops to the brink of a strike. On their first patrol together, Murphy and Lewis come across a gang headed by Clarence Boddicker, Kurtwoodsmith. There is a running gunfight that ends with Lewis knocked down and incapacitated, and Murphy at the mercy of Boddicker and his men, who brutally execute him. And that is where we left off. Is Murphy okay after having his limb shot off by shotguns and a bullet to the brain? What the heck is a Robocop? Will corporate greed win the day? Let's find out, Kristen. Take us back to the plot.
Okay, so next part of the film, we see flashes of things going on. It's a very disorienting opening scene there. We know that we're in Murphy's head, but we're not quite sure. So we learn that Morton has converted Murphy's corpse into Robocop, which is this heavily armored cyborg with no memory of his former life. And basically, how could they do this, you might ask? He basically signed a form when he joined, so it said that they can do what they want with his corpse. And so Robocop is now Murphy, even though Murphy does not know he's Murphy.
Corpse. Lose the arm.
Right.
Sorry.
And Robocop is programmed with 3 prime directives: serve the public trust, protect the innocent, and uphold the law. There's also a secret 4th prime directive, but that is classified. We don't know, and he doesn't know either. Or at least he doesn't tell anybody because it's classified. And so Robocop is assigned to work in Metro West. And so we get this scene right after, so he's assigned there, and then Lewis and other cops are practicing their shooting skills, and then they see Robocop come in to practice as well, and once they see how good he is, they become a little worried that they might be replaced. And they're a little shaken by the whole thing, just seeing this random robotic man that shows up to work alongside them. And on his first patrol, he does pretty well. He stops a convenience store robbery by slamming the guy into a glass case. Next, he stops a mugging by shooting the assailant between the legs of the victim so that he doesn't hurt her. There's also a hostage situation, which he breaks up. Before that, the guy holding the people hostage negotiates his demands, including a new car. And so obviously he's doing pretty good as out on the streets, and so he's getting praised by the media for his brutally efficient campaign against crime. And once we see that part, of course, we're into another news segment of the film where we get a few more commercials and newscasts, and one of them is for a family board game called Nukem with the tagline, "Get 'em before they get you." And there's also a promise from OCP that crime will be eliminated in Old Detroit within 40 days thanks to Robocop. But unknown to his human monitors, Robocop still retains memories of his life as Murphy, including brief little glimpses of his wife and son and a nightmare about how he was killed. So he's supposed to not remember anything, but he still has these flashes. And when he has a really bad one, he wakes up and walks out. And they are trying to restrain him, figure out where he's headed. And on his way out, he encounters Lewis, who addresses him as Murphy. And she has that realization because while he was out on duty, I think there was like a news segment or something. You can correct me in a second, Adam. But she sees the way he holsters his gun, which something we didn't mention earlier was that he had learned this trick of how to like holster his gun really cool to impress his son. So when she sees RoboCop do it, she's like, oh, okay, that must be Murphy.
Yeah, they don't really like get into the technical on how they merged a human and a robot together to create them, which is actually, I think they simplified it, which is great because we could just get to the fun of the whole story. Like, why do that? This is comic book kind of, comic book superhero area where that doesn't matter. Let's go with it. So I think that they did that really well.
They did a great job, and I think it's she sees him do that in the target shooting scene.
Okay, yeah. I couldn't remember where she saw it. I just know she did.
Yeah, that was the twirling of the gun, like the old Western guys used to do.
Yeah, when they're out on that first patrol together, when Murphy is before still alive.
Yes, before the steel mill.
Like he demonstrate, like he's practicing that, like while they're on kind of a break, and he tells Lewis about that little trick, and they also then because like both when he's getting converted into RoboCop, and then at the end of this section we're talking about, with the nightmares of his wife and son, you're getting little flashes of what his life was like. Like you get his son in front of the TV watching the show, and the guy twirling the gun, and the son going, "Can you do that, Dad?" And they also keep giving you like this clip of the wife kind of serious, like in the bedroom, like, "We need to talk," and like those are things that come back again and again, and also, again, like you talk about, like callbacks to Murphy when he's still just RoboCop. Once he's RoboCop, when he's first holding Emil and one of the other henchmen, Joe, I think, at gunpoint before the other guys get the drop on him and execute him. He says the line, "Doesn't matter, dead or alive, you guys are coming with me," which then you start to hear RoboCop use that phrase as well.
Actually, Adam, that's in the next section, but it's fine.
Oh, sorry.
I was like, wait, did I talk about that? No, that's coming up, but still accurate. It's like literally right next in the film, so it's not too far away.
And no one suspects that the human part of Murphy still exists, except for Anne at the moment.
Well, she's hoping, she's uncertain, like she's trying to figure it out, and because like the audience is even told, like, because like all the scenes of RoboCop being built are from RoboCop's POV, like to the point you even have like them, putting in the targeting LED, like screwing it on.
Yeah, and I also mentioned it because the way people are talking at him, he's clearly a thing and not a person, and just taking orders, and it's you are a robot.
Right, and they even say, is he going to remember any of this? No, his memory's going to be wiped, and this is again where you, like we talked in part one about Miguel Ferrer's great performance, and you get again some of those great moments between bravado and childlike uncertainty. I'm actually just a kid in adult clothes. I don't actually know what I'm doing. That's great. During that scene, and then you've got a couple iconic scenes. One, the breaking up the robbery of the convenience store. Is the first. Well, and like first when you even introduced to Murphy as RoboCop, because you see everything just from Murphy's POV, from RoboCop's POV for a long time, and then he's taken to Metro West, which was which was where Murphy was based out of, and then when they first bring him out, like you first only see like a glimpse, and then you kind of see him through frosted glass. So it's building up your anticipation, before you actually see him in full, and you see like officers rushing, like, what is that? We got to see him. Um, you know,
A spectacle.
I just want to talk about just the fact that they can turn this man into a robot in the first place. Like, that's got to be some HR violation, right? Like something. What kind of form did this man sign that they're like? Did they just tell his family they didn't have a body to bury? Like, the logistics, the implications of it is very alarming. That was something that was like my first thing. I was just like, how can they do this legally?
well, because remember, in this world, and which is totally different than the real world, corporations are king, you know, and so the right of the corporation supersedes all here, you know, and like here, corporations are basically replacing the government. Like you still have quasi government, but slowly, you know, the corporation, you know, here the corporation is clearly more powerful than the municipal government and is superseding their authority uh, in most places. So I think that's how they do it.
Horrifying.
Yeah, well, and I mean that's kind of meant to be part of the implication too, is
Right.
you know that this is horrifying. But with the robbery at the convenience store, one of the things to note is that's also the introduction of a running piece of media you will see on throughout different clips of people watching a TV show that seems to be very popular and very well liked throughout the Robocop universe. You never learn the name of it in the movie. The clip that was going to have the name mentioned was deleted, and we'll talk about why in a minute. But it's the guy, you know, usually with a number of attractive women making horrible jokes and saying, "I'd buy that for $1." And then everybody like watching who's looking at the TV laughing uproariously, like it's the funniest thing in the world. And that's, you know, they're meant to be a commentary on
Shallow TV.
yeah, exactly. Which is why, like, because like for some people they go, why is everybody laughing when it's not funny? That's actually supposed to be the point. And the name of the show in universe is called "It's Not My Problem." And so, like I said, you see this pop up throughout. You would have learned it's called "It's Not My Problem" in, like I said, a deleted scene. But that deleted scene was took place at a pizzeria and had a bunch of the attractive women all topless. And apparently they were going to get an X-rated, you know, like that was part of what they had to cut to get down to an R. That's one of the very memorable parts of the movie is, you know, like a lot of people who are fans of it, you know, will just, you know, randomly say things like, I'll buy that for $1, you know, just various things. I know I do. Also, like you talked about, like there's an attempted sexual assault of a woman going on, and Robocop stops it by shooting the guy in his man area, you know, which has become iconic. And that is one of the things that was added by Paul Verhoeven, that particular scene.
Yeah, I was impressed by the way he shot between her legs to do that. Oh my God. I was like, it felt very like cinematic. I appreciated that for sure. And the commercials in this section too. The whole like Nukem game, that seems like something that literally was cooked up in the Adam Savage lab. Like that's something like that's something that I could like, you know, when I saw that, I was like, I see now why this is Adam's favorite movie. Like the humor is your humor, you know? But I did like it. Like that game did make me laugh. I was just like, it's perfect.
You mentioned like the guy is asking for a car, and you see this car talked about and advertised throughout the movie as being like the best thing. Everybody loves it, you know, like it's the top of the line luxury car. Um, did you notice what, like, because they only ever refer to it as the 6,000 and then it's spell out their letters, you know. Um, but it's also not that subtle because it's the 6,000 SUX.
And we do get another reference to that car later on in the film in another commercial where we'll talk about the miles per gallon, which is egregious.
Yeah, well, there's another commercial. There's also a couple, you know, like there's a billboard. Then there's a whole thing with some of the characters getting cars later. There was a great joke with the name of the middle school. Rob, I don't know if you caught that.
No, I didn't.
It's Lee Iacocca Middle School.
Oh, I may have, yeah, and I just didn't know if it probably just went over me because it was such a popular figure.
Well, I mean, it's one of those
80s.
things that's almost not even a joke. Like I'm surprised there's not a Lee Iacocca Middle School in Detroit. For those who don't know, Lee Iacocca was an icon in the auto industry. He started at Ford and created the Mustang. He also created a number of other cars for Ford, including infamously the Pinto. And after his long run at Ford, he then went over to Chrysler at the end of the 70s, and Chrysler was a dying brand at that time, a dying company, and revitalized that company and brought it back to prominence by the early 90s when he retired. And so, this is towards the end of his run, but he's already this iconic name. And so, especially to Detroit and the history of Detroit and the auto industry. And so it makes sense that they would talk about his, him potentially having a school. I think this is also the newscast where the peace platform misfires, burning down some houses in San Bernardino. I could be mistaken. That could be one of the other later newscasts.
Yeah, I'd have to look to remember. I definitely remember that. I just don't remember when it happens.
Well, because that's a callback to the earlier joke about the Star Wars peace platform, and that's where you get to learn the name was ironic because it shows all these lasers shooting out from it, which caused the fire. And then there's another joke in the idea that it killed two former presidents who had retired to the area. And so that's supposed to be a reference to Ronald Reagan and Nixon. But again, like there's so much to talk about, so much that's just well done and subtle throughout all this. Really loved it.
Yeah, and as you already mentioned about Emil, that's another part that we kind of already talked about it. But yeah, when he's like robbing the gas station and antagonizing the attendant, that's the next part of the film here. And because of that mannerism and catchphrase of "dead or alive, you're coming with me," he's like, "I know this guy. We killed this guy. I don't understand." And so from having that moment that he recognizes him, Robocop has more memories recalled coming up. And then afterward, he uses the police database to identify Emil's associates. And that's when he sees Clarence Bodiger and his arrest record and shows that he killed Alex Murphy. And then he sees the picture of Alex Murphy and recognizes that too, recognizes himself. And then he goes and explores the home, as you mentioned. So we're all pretty much right in that area. And the home is empty because his wife and son moved away after his death, after they were told he died. And then there's a scene where Robocop goes to a club to look for other associates, Leon Nash, and to find Bodiger as well. And elsewhere, so that's happening. Robocop's trying to hunt down the people who killed him. And Bob Morton, the guy who came up with Robocop, is doing drugs with two women in his house when Bodiger comes to the door to kill him for Dick Jones as revenge for Morton's attempt to usurp his position at OCP. So he's just like, "You're trying to take my jobs. I'm going to send someone to kill you." And so after shooting him in the leg, he lets off a grenade that blows the house up. And Robocop, so that's happening. He's dealing with some crap there. And back with Robocop, he is tracking down Bodiger's gang. After a shootout, like he brutally interrogates Bodiger. Wow, basically he takes out everybody in the gang, like one by one in a crazy way. Not like as in this whole scene, but before that, he does interrogate Bodiger. And that's when, like, in a desperation, he admits that he's working for Dick Jones. And Robocop cannot kill Bodiger, as that would violate one of his prime directives. So he decides he's going to bring Robocop to the station Robocop is going to bring him to the station, my apologies, to be processed. And then Robocop attempts to arrest Jones for being involved in stuff with the gangs at the OCP tower. But that's when we learn that Directive 4 was activated. We learn that Directive 4 is a failsafe measure to neutralize Robocop when he acts against an OCP executive. And so there's this line from Dick Jones where it's just wild. He says, "You're our product, and we can't have our product working against us," which we were kind of just talking a bit about the section before, just about corporations seeing workers as products, as commodities, and that really puts the nail in the coffin for that messaging there.
There's going to be a ton to talk about in this section. The gas station scene, where they blow up an entire gas station, is just great. And like you mentioned, Bob Morton, when he gets killed. What we didn't mention is there's a scene earlier of back at OCP, in like the big executive, of Bob going into the executive bathroom, and
Very
he's
fancy
talking with another.
bathrooms.
Yes, yeah, like where you even got to like badge in to get in, like to prove you're an executive. And he's talking all this crap. Like one of the other executives is talking about like, "Oh, you're doing a great job. Dick Jones better watch his back." And so Bob starts talking all this smack about Dick Jones, and you notice like as he's doing this, and he and the other guy are at the urinal. All the other people who are in the bathroom are like rushing and like whispering to each other and heading out. And you see at one point some feet in a stall, and then you hear some flushing, and you see the other guy who was with Morton kind of rush and like zip up and like maybe even like wet himself a bit because he wasn't actually done and run out. And that's because it was Dick Jones in the stall. And so they have, tense exchange, and, Bob doesn't back down. He doesn't, at first he's a little like, uh-oh, I got caught, but then, he stands up for, and is like, hey, no, like, you're mad at me that I, uh, you know, made the killer move, like you fumbled, I picked it up, but uh, also Dick Jones is talking about like, this wasn't just about, selling, the ED 209s. It was about selling replacement parts and maintenance and all these things, which is stuff, like modern, it's like like today they would have been talking about like, you know, this isn't just about, selling them the ED 209. It's about selling them the subscription service and the, software, software as a service, contract and all these other things. So, again, very precursory, but that's where you kind of see the decision is, from Dick Jones that Bob has to go. And then with the scene with Boddicker, that's where you find out that Jones has been working with Boddicker to uh, increase the crime in Detroit, and to necessitate his program.
And now I want to talk about some of the goons that are part of Bodrick's gang, because they're real characters, and there's a couple that really stick out. And I'd say, like, first and foremost, Emil, who's played by Paul McCrane. He's like one of the standout, bad guys, goons in the movie. You might know him from he played Montgomery McNeil in the 1980 movie Fame. He was also the character Frank Berry in the 1984 film Hotel New Hampshire, and is known as his character is Robert Romano in the NBC medical drama TV series ER. That probably would get more, probably more people are familiar from that, at least in recent times.
Well, because he was on, like, because I looked it up, because ER ran for like 15 years.
It was the longest run, yeah.
So he was on for like 100 plus episodes, which is a good long run. Like, I mean, he probably gets good money from that. But so I wanted to confirm, because like we talked before that Miguel Ferrer, who's playing Bob Morton, is first cousins with George Clooney. And obviously George Clooney got his big break on ER, but there's a good chance like that, they weren't on at the same time. Turns out they were. They do actually have overlap. Like he's like the back part, like he joins towards the last couple seasons of George Clooney's run, which also, like, for some reason I only thought George Clooney was on the show for like 3 years, when he was on for like, like 3 seasons when he was on for like 5. And then and Paul started like as like a reoccurring character in like season 3, and was like full time for like 4 and 5. And then
Yeah, he was really. I mean, he did a great job in the film as far as being like,
oh yeah,
you
just
wanted him to be killed. He wanted him.
yeah,
He was
yeah,
on
yeah,
top.
just scummy scumbag. Is always and also just that kind of brainless idiot kind of thing.
Totally. And then there's another guy on there who, like, another character where his face, and he can give some great facial expressions. It's hilarious. But especially as he's shooting guns, we'll get to that in a minute. But there's a character named Leon Nash, and he's played by Ray Wise, and he's best known for his role as Leland Palmer in Twin
Peaks. Yeah, our third Twin Peaks connection, along with Miguel and Dan.
And the prequel film for Twin Peaks, yeah. So he was also in Swamp Thing, The Journey of Natty Gone.
Natty Gone, that's a John Cusack movie from the 80s.
I don't know that at all. Good Night and Good Luck, X-Men First Class, God's Not Dead 2, and a number of TV roles outside of Twin Peaks. Includes his character Vice President Hal Gardner in 24. He played the Devil in Reaper, Ian Ward in The Young and the Restless, and Marvin in Fresh Off the Boat. He did some comedy as well. I'm not too familiar with. Do you know much?
Tim and Eric, who had a lot of stuff on Comedy Central, that like very absurdist stuff. So yeah, he's been involved in some of their stuff as well. But yeah, no, I love Ray Wise. Swamp Thing is a great cheesy Wes Craven movie. I've not seen Natty Gone. I just know of it. It's a John Cusack is more of a supporting role in that. That the lead is Meredith Salinger, who's she was in Dream a Little Dream, I think, and like Lake Placid. She's now married. She's the second wife of Patton Oswalt. That's who he remarried.
But he's got to be in something else, because I know him. Yeah. So he's so familiar.
I know. Well, he's one of those faces that feels like you've seen him a lot more than you have. I also Reaper was
probably just looks similarly to other people. Maybe that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. And he is in a ton of stuff beyond what we're talking about. But yeah, no, I love Ray Wise, and like his big solo scene in this is the nightclub scene where Robocop finds him to try and track down Boddicker. Robocop's making his way through the nightclub, and he finds Leon, and Leon goes, "What the hell are you?" and tries attacking him, including attempting to kick Robocop in the junk with perfect cartoon sound effect, of doink. And so this is a fun little bit of trivia. Just after you hear that doink, they do a quick cut to the crowd dancing, and it's like one guy with his face really close to the camera dancing really wild. That is Paul Verhoeven.
Oh wow, okay.
Nice.
And he didn't even know he was being filmed or was going to be in the movie. So the story behind it is all the extras in the scene weren't, like, he wanted them to dance like really over the top, really stupid, and they were all being like too self-conscious, like being too, reserved in their dancing. And so some director, like a lot of directors try and avoid this, but especially Paul tends to give a lot of like, no, I want you to do it like this kind of direction. And so he was demonstrating for them how he wanted them to dance. And the the director of photography, Joost Vacano, just got the camera on him and rolled for a little bit as he danced, demonstrating. And so then the editor decided to include that as a little fun Easter egg.
I swore you were going to say he really just kicked metal, and that sound was a foot in
No,
metal,
man.
and
He
No, no,
broke
no,
his
no.
toe.
Because the suit is plastic. Oh, so one fun thing as we're starting to see the RoboCop suit, and what you'll notice is you only ever see, like, you mostly see RoboCop either getting out of a car or already in a car. You never see him, like, he's already partially out of a car or partially in a car or all the way in a car. You never see him fully transitioning between in the car or out of the car.
because he can't.
Correct. He can't. In the full suit, he doesn't actually fit in a car. So the other fun thing to think about is, because he can't fit in a car in a full suit, anytime you see him driving, Peter Weller is pantsless.
Wow,
You gotta do what you gotta do to make
Well,
the
I mean,
film work.
obviously not like obscenely pantsless, but it's like just RoboCop from the top up.
that changes everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So
But
there was also another goon that I mentioned had the most annoying laugh. It was it's horrible. The character's name is Joe Cox. The actor's name is Jesse Goins. Jesse Goins is best known for his 1980s TV series, The Greatest American Hero, as Siler Johnson. That was a great short-lived show back in the day. Films include Up the Creek, Robocop 3, The Ugly Truth, and TV shows include, and this is one that I don't even know how the younger generation would even react to it now, Different Strokes,
what you talking
Desperate
about, Willis?
Housewives, Boy Meets World, ER, Seinfeld, Boston Legal, and also Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, he had a really big list of like guest appearances where it's just, an episode here or there or something. There was a way bigger list.
Yeah, he's just one of those working actors. Like, you
Hmm.
probably have seen him in 1,000 different things and didn't always clock him, but he's, always staying busy. And he does a great job. Like, you'll hear me gush. The whole cast is just so good at in their roles. Um, you know, a couple more things I want to talk about. One is just a little bit more trivia. So there's a great scene, that scene between Bob and Boddicker. When Boddicker breaks in and kills him and plays the video, and plays the video from Dick beforehand, where you kind of realize they're all in league together. That is not the first time Kurtwood-Smith has killed Miguel Ferrer on screen. That they'd actually worked on a movie a few years earlier called Flashpoint together, and Kurtwood got to kill Miguel in that movie as well, which they kind of laughed about, because like I talked about in part one, that a lot of the cast just got along really well, and hung out off screen, and that was something that Kurtwood and Miguel joked about together. So then the really big, like, emotional, like, that's starting to get into the heart of the emotion of the movie scene is when RoboCop goes home. Like, that's Murphy starting to really reemerge. And this is what drew Paul in part to the movie, because he saw this as like recreating Paradise Lost. That the home before Murphy's death was the Garden of Eden, and after Murphy, it is law. After the death, it is he's only left with the memories. That's where you again see memories of the family. You finally see more context to the whole scene with the wife's "We've got to talk," and it turns out like it's a swerve. They've been swerving you because they make it seem like, oh, maybe there was trouble with the marriage, and she goes, "We've got to talk. I love you so much," and starts giggling. And so it shows, what a great home life he used to have. And we talked earlier about, this is, this religious imagery is there. We talked earlier about the imagery of of the crucifixion of Jesus during Murphy's execution. Obviously, then that then plays into the fact Murphy gets resurrected as RoboCop. He comes back from the dead. And then there's some more religious imagery that comes into play later on. But it was because we talked about initially Verhoeven had thrown the script in the away after reading a couple pages, and it was his wife who then picked it up, and she has a degree in psychology and read the whole thing and told him he should reconsider it. And it was once he got to this scene, to the scene of RoboCop going back home, that he was all in. But especially for a lot of the news breaks and the very specific pointed criticisms of America and American media, you got to remember part of the reason he threw it away is because English is not his first language. And so imagine trying, Rob, even with your Spanish, imagine trying to read something that is a very pointed satire in Spanish and getting it on the first pass.
Yeah, it's really easy to miss the subtle.
Exactly. And especially when it's so specifically culturally attuned to the American sensibilities. So there was a lot of times with some of these media break jokes and other stuff like that where he's not actually getting the joke. He just knows what's in the script and has talked to everybody else and understands it's funny and gets how to film it, but doesn't, is kind of asking for an explanation on it a little further. But
all that American stuff.
Yeah. But overall, again, just so much great stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the reveal that Directive 4 is basically just a failsafe to protect the higher ups, just so they can't be held accountable for anything. Unfortunately, extremely true to life, and that I was like, okay, I like what they're doing with this, because it's it's commentary, but it's also just I don't know,
reality.
it's just reality, exactly.
Yeah, well, we also talked about how in part one that Boddicker and his glasses are based off of Himmler, and how a lot of because Himmler ran the brown shirt street thugs who then eventually got formalized into the SS under the Nazis, and that's a lot of what Boddicker's men are doing and acting like for essentially the OCP as the Nazi, Dick Jones as the Nazis, and so seeing that, reinforcing that relationship between them, with Boddicker thinking he's protected, and then Jones getting upset. But again, Rob, this is where I was talking about, Boddicker confesses to RoboCop, so RoboCop records that, and then RoboCop goes to arrest Dick Jones, and Dick Jones is like, he shouldn't have talked to you. He should have known better than to talk to someone who's recording, who's always recording, like you are, and then proceeds to give a villainous monologue explaining his plan.
Yeah.
Big dummy.
So, but yeah, no, it's just all such good stuff and well executed.
Well, I had noticed that he had left that recording, that original recording, which looked like a DVD, in the DVD player.
I guess he was just so confident that he would be able to overpower RoboCop that it wouldn't even matter if he was recording, because he was going to take him out anyway.
Yeah.
But he didn't, obviously. Spoiler, I guess, but believe it or not, RoboCop doesn't get killed again, hopefully. We'll find out here.
Yeah.
We'll find out see. Because we I mean, we kind of already were just talking about it now, where Jones definitely admits about his culpability in Morden's death. and he acknowledges like, yeah, I definitely was a part of that, and now I have to kill you after my villain monologue explaining everything. And so he releases an ED-209 to destroy Robocop. And although he does escape from the building, Robocop is still attacked by police force on OCP's order and is badly damaged. And so he is in bad shape, but Lewis rescues him and brings him to the abandoned steel mill to repair himself. And before we get to see what happens with that, we get another round of commercials, this time for the 6000 SUX with 8.2 miles to the gallon. And then a news report of Santa Barbara burned from a laser cannon. There it is, Adam.
We talked about earlier. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so there it is there. And then a report of OCP and the cops attempting negotiations in hopes of averting a citywide strike by police. And despite them trying to come with negotiations, the police are feeling very underfunded, very short-staffed, so they do indeed go on strike, which is what kind of helps Lewis be able to be there to help Robocop, because they're all on strike anyway, so she doesn't have to be at work. And so Jones frees Boddicker from his imprisonment and the remaining gang, and so they're feeling like hot shit right now. And he arms them with some high-powered weaponry to destroy Robocop too. And he motivates the criminal by telling him that all the new people coming in to build Delta City that can control new markets and territory. So, sorry, let me read that again, because I'm telling him of all the new people coming in. So basically, like, the new people he can corrupt. The new people he can have some kind of control over, new territory to control. And so back with Robocop and Lewis, she brings him some supplies, and they take off his eye covering, and we get to see that he maintains his original face despite, having the covering. And just from the realization of who he is and just all of it kind of coming together, he is pretty depressed knowing his wife and son moved on, thinking that he was dead.
This is, where we get the ED-209 and the great work from Tippett Studios, mixing in stop motion and, the full-size model they had. This is also where, and I think in that fight, the effects hold up really well. That's a really cool fight between Robocop and ED-209. That's also where you get the running nerd joke, especially from the early 2000s, about how bad ED-209s are at stairs, that they don't do well with that. And Kristen, you mentioned the SUX getting 8.2 miles per gallon, and that was a commentary on cars at the time. Especially higher end cars. It was getting a little better coming out of the 70s, but that was only a slight exaggeration on some cars at the time. For sure.
Jeez.
Yeah, when it was like advertising that with like 8.2 miles to the gallon, I was like, what the hell? That's terrible. But obviously that's the point. That's the intention. But yeah, like I immediately, like, my ears perked up, like, wait a minute, because they're like, hyping it up as the greatest car. Sounds like another type of car that has been hyped up immensely and it's actually crap. I will not say it for legal reasons, but I think we can all guess.
And so you covered, I think you covered the part where they're arming up again, right? Broderick in this game.
We're not quite to the big weapon. We're not to them playing with a weapon yet. That's coming up next.
Yeah. No,
I did have one question. So when he takes his mask off, all of his abilities and directives aren't a thing anymore, right? That's essentially what it is. Like when he isn't wearing the RoboCop attire.
No, it's still there. Like you see that at the end. Because he basically doesn't have the visor on for the rest of the movie. This is more symbolic of him reclaiming his humanity as Murphy.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
That you're seeing his full face. Because even at the end, when he's in the boardroom, he's still fighting with Directive 4.
Right. And we can get into that unless there was anything else in this section you wanted to talk about.
Couple small things with this section. So when again, Kurtwood Smith and Ronnie Cox are great together. So like when Boddicker goes into Dick Jones' office and is complaining, and I mean, it in some ways it seems so brazen that they're actually meeting together in public, like that. Like you would think like they would be trying to be clandestine and hide their relationship, but he just goes right into Dick Jones' office and they're having that conversation again. Kurtwood Smith is just so good, sliding between different things. Like, I always knew I liked you, Richard. But he also has an interaction with the secretary. Where he's all like skeevy, like chewing gum, takes the gum off, sticks it on the nameplate. It's like, hey, what are you doing after this? So one, like playing with the gum, sticking that on the nameplate was all improvised, similar to like when Boddicker got arrested, he spits his when he's in the booking station, he spits blood on the booking sheet, and when they ask him his name, he just spits blood on the booking sheet and says, "F you, give me my phone call." That was all improvised, and that kind of set the tone for him for working with Verhoeven. Once they realized they were kind of on the same level with blood, and that Verhoeven was open to improvising. But in addition to jumping back to the scene with the secretary, in addition to improvising the bit with the gum, what makes that scene great is the secretary is actually played by Kurtwood Smith's wife. That her reaction and being like skeeved out by him is extra funny for that. That what happened was they had someone else cast in the role, and for whatever reason, like she dropped out or something, or like didn't. I think it was even like just didn't show up, like just flaked. And Kurtwood Smith's wife is a professional actress and just happened to be on set with him, and it was like, hey, my wife can do it, and so got to have that, fun little scene together.
Nice, yeah. It's always funny when they have to like pretend to be disgusted by their partner on screen.
Yeah. No, always amuses me.
Yeah, so we can talk about what Rob wanted to talk about, which is just the chaos of Detroit, because riots are breaking out throughout the city, and Emil is watching TV downtown, which is one of those times with the line
I buy that for $1.
Yes, he's watching, and he's just like, it really locked in like everybody else. But so he's doing that before meeting up with Boddicker and the other men. And so Boddicker is showing off his new weapon to take down Robocop that's capable of blowing up a car with a single shot. And it's called it's like a Cobra assault cannon. And they have a blast, pun intended, using it to destroy stuff in the city. And as Boddicker and his men come for him at the steel mill, Robocop / Murphy is ready. Despite their best efforts, Robocop is able to put up a good fight. We see one shot of Emil becoming deformed by some toxic waste, and he's accidentally run over by Boddicker, who crashes from impact. But stepping out of the car, he's ready to shoot at Lewis, who is badly injured by Clarence. And so Robocop approaches him holding a gun, but building materials are dropped on him as he starts to make the approach. And despite being injured, Lewis is able to shoot the control tower where his other henchmen are at. And so Boddicker, there's a lot going on, but it's like there's like the control tower blowing up, and then Robocop and Boddicker are going at it, and Boddicker stabs Robocop, but stabs him, but Robocop is able to give the finishing blow by stabbing him in the throat. And so that's when he finally is able to take him out. And then Robocop goes to the OCP tower to confront Jones and kill the security Robocop outside. It's not really Robocop, the other machine. And then the 209 guy. And then Jones is in a board meeting, but Robocop's interruptions reveals the truth behind Morton's murder. So Jones takes the old man hostage, but the old man fires Jones, which nullifies Directive 4, which gives Robocop the ability to shoot him. And being able to shoot him causes him to crash through a window to his death. And then the old man compliments Robocop's shooting and asks his name, to which he replies, Murphy. And that's the end of the film.
So, like when Detroit is descending into chaos, Boddicker and Joe both show up like having, and Emil all show up having just gotten out of jail. But Boddicker is driving a 6000 SUX,
Of course
and
he
then
is.
and then Joe shows up driving a 6000 SUX, and Boddicker doesn't really like that. So Boddicker pulls out this massive gun, like a 50 caliber anti-aircraft gun or something like that, and blows up the Joe's SUX, and then they all get those guns and just start going nuts on the street, blowing up different storefronts and stuff. So apparently, for one of those explosions, it was a little more powerful than the effects team intended, and got like glass and some singeing on the actors, because it was like the actual actors like Kurtwood and Ray and Paul and everybody in the scene. But then they went up to him and like, hey, we're sorry about that. You actually end up getting 500 extra dollars stunt pay for that scene. And they're like, oh, hey, that's not bad. And so they were joking, like, after that, we were trying to stand as close as we could to any explosions to get another
Well,
extra.
if you told me they got bonus for every explosion, I would believe it, or a tax break on the movie production for every, because the amount of explosions, like everything, the scene starts off where like things are intact. There's storefronts, there's cars. When the scene is over, everything is destroyed. These guys went nuts, and they were just like blowing things up. It was the FS. This was a documentation of someone's favorite day in the office ever in the 80s. The SFX guys, that day they got to blow everything up. It was just crazy.
It was great. It was over the top. And then, you're back at the steel mill. And, one of the things we talked about is like from the previous little bit at the steel mill where it was just Murphy and Lewis, where Murphy is really reclaiming his humanity in those interactions with Lewis. And she's helping him target, because his targeting system had gotten malfunctioned, and he's learning the fate of his family, and that's when his face is uncovered, and we talked about it's uncovered for the rest of the film. One that looks so incredible, it looks so real, like it's hard to believe it's a makeup job where they built out around Peter Weller's face while keeping his face shape intact to then look like his skin is stretched back and everything. But that required hours in the makeup chair. Like he talked about, like it would often be like 6 hours, 8 hours of just him in the makeup chair before shooting for like another 6 to 8 hours, And so, like he joked, like Peter Weller talked about, like he would often be like getting to set to start getting into makeup, and there would be like other people like just leaving set to like go party, uh, you know, and then by the time they'd gone home, or like they were, they'd been out partying, like come back to like fix something, and then we're going to go home and go to bed, and by the time they would get back to set, he would have been there the whole time, and then everybody else would be ready to go. So like we talked about, like his attitude and like being standoffish and how difficult the shoot was for him, that also contributed to it, especially in these scenes, the steel mill scenes, which were mostly shot in Pittsburgh. But he also talked about like once they're in the kind of water, first, when you first see Robocop interrupt Boddicker going after Lewis, you see him walking, and it looks, because the water is very shallow, almost not there, it looks like, and this is deliberate, it's meant to look like he's walking on water.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Um, again, we're talking about the religious imagery
Yeah, I
uh,
know.
that's being included, and then as RoboCop is confronting Boddicker, Leon drops a bunch of metal on him, and then Lewis, blows up Leon in the control tower with one of the massive guns, and then Boddicker tries to, stabs RoboCop, which again, like this is imagery that's almost similar to, like it always reminds me of Terminator 2, uh, where Boddicker stabs RoboCop, and it's almost like another death blow in a way. Uh, and like in Terminator 2, in the climactic scene in the Foundry, at one point, the T-1000 has stabbed uh, the T-800, Arnold's character, through uh, the chest in a similar fashion, and Arnold's characters seem to go completely offline, and only then revives and pulls the stake out. And again, that's going into religious resurrection imagery. But then the way RoboCop dispatches Boddicker is like he'd already established he has this metal spike for interfacing with computer terminals, which is similar to it's like a more violent version of the interface like R2D2 and other droids have in the Star Wars universe. So like you'd seen him use it to access the criminal database to look up Emil's associates, and that's actually how he'd. So he then extends that spike, and that's what he punches and kills Boddicker with. And then you know you see the whole boardroom scene. He again uses that spike to play the video for everybody to show proof of Jones' nefarious actions. And it ends obviously with the triumph of Murphy himself has resurrected, that and come through. But one of the keys
So,
is also.
so you're really buying into the religious aspect.
Yeah, well, I'm buying into it because the people who created the movie have talked extensively of that was intentional. Like that's not, that's not like one of those like where, oh, like the Wizard of Oz, you can read it as the the Golden Brick Road is the gold standard, and the Cowardly Lion is really William Jennings Bryan, and stuff like and the ruby slippers were actually originally silver in the story, and so it's all a metaphor for late 19th century monetary policy and politics by L. Frank Baum, which again wasn't intentional, but you can have that reading on it. This is a reading that was intentional, as stated by not just Paul Verhoeven, but even though they, Neumeier and Miner hadn't put that into the original script, they talked about including those aspects in the film with Verhoeven. So everybody knew he was doing that, and that was all intentional. Yes. You could say whether it was well done or whether it was too subtle or whether it really hit, but that was intent. There was intention to do those, to make those call outs.
Bringing it back to something we talked about in part 1, we were talking about Cronenberg was approached at one point maybe to do this movie, and that whole scene with the toxic sludge was giving the body horror element of Cronenberg. So imagine if that man had access to all of the stuff in this. It would have been crazy.
Oh yeah. No, it would have been nuts. It also always reminds me, and probably because I saw them again, this is I probably saw this not either too long before or too long after I saw Toxic Avenger for the first time. And it also kind of is a sign of things that Toxic Avenger, I kind of went, that's a little too much for me at this age. Whereas Robocop, I was just fine with. Loved Robocop and Robocop 2 when I saw that. But, because I probably saw this movie for the first time at like 6, 8 years old, somewhere around there. Um, uh, but yeah, well, and uh, this is also I, how familiar are you guys with the term cyberpunk?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
It's a genre. Obviously, it's very well known for the game, the video game that's based off the role playing game that's inspired by the genre that came out. So the genre has a lot of influences, especially starting with the work of like William Gibson. Um, and Neil Stephenson, which a lot of Neil Stephenson's work comes after this. But Robocop is kind of a foundational work in that. And part of the punk in cyberpunk, like the cyber describes, future sci-fi, especially related to the internet and online. It usually involves corporations run amok and a dystopian future. But one of the parts that, in describing the genre as punk is because it usually is dystopian. Usually the hero winning isn't truly winning the day and like defeating the empire. It's, and, making the world better and, like, oh, it's going to be a brighter day. Things are going to get better from here, slowly, you know, but usually it's just what the hero is fighting against is a villain who is going to make the world objectively worse, and they just prevent that. They don't do anything to change how crappy the world is currently. They just prevent it from getting worse. And that is exactly what happens with Robocop. That
I thought the
all
cornerstone of Cyberpunk was more Blade Runner-ish.
Blade Runner is another good example. Yes. Yeah. But, even there, like you think about Rob, everything they do in that movie doesn't change anything in that world, you know, uh, but here, everything, they do, OCP is still in charge. Like the big win is, the old man is still running things, and the old man is coded as good in some ways, but he's still the head of an evil corporation for the most part, and they're still going to be trying to do most of the things they were trying to do with Dick Jones there, and you know, Directive 4 is only overcome because Dick is fired, not because like they removed it or said, oh, this shouldn't be in RoboCop. It's just Dick gets fired, so that allows him to be ended. So, uh, just interesting stuff to think. So,
Yeah,
over,
very good.
yeah, no, overall, I clearly loved it. What did you guys think?
Yeah, overall, I liked it. I think the news elements made it more interesting for me to kind of go beyond just like the action elements and just the commentary on just how bodies are used in this world as test subjects or whatever. Is something I could see happening in reality. So that made it a very interesting element for me. So I'm glad to say that I've finally seen it, that it's a movie that's talked about a lot. So now I can say that I have seen it.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, no, I think it's it's a core example of a classic '80s film, but I'm not as into it as other people are. Like, kind of surprisingly, because I like sci-fi a lot, but this is a little I don't know. I just didn't buy into it as much, but it's done really well, and yeah, I don't know. It was, for me. It was also kind of weird to see. I had been so many years removed from watching it again that that was sort of like I saw it completely differently, and I don't even really have that many memories. Like, I remember I saw it when I was a kid, but I just didn't have the memories, and maybe I just didn't connect with it. So I probably connected with it more this second time around than I did even back then.
Yeah, well, and for me, like I was talking about, like I originally saw it when I was like 6 or 8 years old. So when you're watching it at that age, you are just watching it on the most basic surface level of this is an action sci-fi movie, and it's as you get older, especially into like your teens and 20s, that you start to see, the more subversive elements. And then you start to see, even as you get older, the symbolism, and the metaphor in it, and all the techniques. And it's a movie, each time I watch it, I appreciate new elements of it on new levels. To me, it is a nearly perfect film. Like I can't imagine, doing it any better in some ways. That to me, it is just a truly an all-time classic, and I was just so glad I got to share it with you guys. So thank you.
Nah, thanks. Can you give us a little heads up on 2 and 3? Are they just as good? Are they?
So we'll get to that in the next section. So because we'll talk about like how successful the movie was, and spin-offs, sequels, and all that kind of stuff. So that was our thoughts. But what did the world of 1987 think? The movie premiered in nearly 1,600 theaters across the country in its opening weekend and took in just over $8 million, which is only good enough for first at the box office, because this is 1987, and what it takes to be first is much different than 2025. It beat out the re-release of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Kristen, Jaws: The Revenge, which is the fourth one with Michael Caine. Both also in their first week taking in over 7.5 and 7.1 million respectively.
Not hard to beat Jaws, I guess, if that's the bad one.
Yeah, well, it's one of the bad ones, but I still love Michael Caine's line about, "I've never seen the movie. I hear it's awful. I've seen the house I bought with it, the money from it. It's wonderful." uh, Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise, in its second week with over $4.6 million, and Full Metal Jacket in its fourth week with over $4.5 million rounded out the top five. The next week, Robocop remained in the top spot with Snow White still in second, but the rest of the top five was filled out with new releases: Summer School, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and La Bamba. It finally lost the top spot in the third week, falling to fourth behind newcomers The Living Daylights and The Lost Boys at 1 and 2 respectively, and a surging La Bamba at 3. When all was said and done, it made over $53.4 million and was the 14th highest grossing film at the North American box office that year. That's $53.4 million at the North American box office. There is no information for international box office. Just for some of these older movies, we have to accept that. It made something. It probably did pretty well. These genre kind of movies do pretty well internationally. And this was all against a $13 million budget. I also know it did incredibly well on home video. It was a top renter once it got there. So, overall, it definitely made a profit for Orion Studios. And the audiences who saw it seemed to love it, with a cinema score from surveyed moviegoers giving it an A- average score. Okay, so it was a hit at the box office and with audiences, but you know what that means? Critics probably hated it, right? No, actually, it was very well received, with the movie getting positive reviews from the likes of Roger Ebert in the Washington Post, has a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes and 70 out of 100 on Metacritic. Its reputation has only grown over the years, with it appearing on numerous lists of best sci-fi films and overall best films, and directors like Neil Blomkamp and Edgar Wright, amongst many others in the industry, praising it.
Yeah, impressive. I love the Lost Boys, and so that one is understandable why that one would dethrone it a bit, because that's another one I feel like you can watch it a bunch of times and find something new to appreciate about it.
Oh yeah. Well, and Full Metal Jacket, similar. La Bamba is a great movie. Summer School is stupid fun. There's actually, because we keep having ER connections in this episode, Revenge of the Nerds 2 is also an ER connection, because Anthony Edwards was involved in the Revenge of the Nerds franchise, and he was one of the stars of ER.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you sure there's not a Twin Peaks reference? Because we had 3 of those already. We need 4. We need to complete the square.
Yeah, I'm sure we will find another one at some point. But so, your movie about the dangers of out of control corporate greed and how capitalism is crushing us has become a minor hit. What do you do? Make every last dollar you can. Not only did they start working on a sequel, more on that shortly, but they began to merchandise the heck out of it. Posters, books, shorts, a home video game, costumes for kids, action figures, and an animated TV series to start with. Now, some of those make sense as merchandising items for a movie targeted to adults with a very hard R rating. But get to as you go, some of the things are clearly marketed for children who, in theory, should not be watching the movie. But in the 80s, that didn't matter. It was all about that sweet, sweet cashola. Fun trivia note: the cartoon was a 13 episode syndicated series produced in partnership with Marvel Productions, part of a subsidiary of Marvel Comics, who made shows like Muppet Babies, G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and Transformers. Well, it was supposed to be 13 episodes. It ended up only being 12 because Marvel Productions head Margaret Loesch decided to take the money for the 13th episode and produce a pilot for a potential X-Men cartoon that then aired in Robocop's slot in place of the 13th episode. It wasn't successful. It was called Pride of the X-Men, spelled Pryde, after Kitty Pryde, who was a main character in the pilot. The X-Men series wasn't picked up and Robocop wasn't renewed, but Loesch moved on to the newly formed Fox Kids in 1990, and still believing in X-Men from the pilot, put an X-Men TV show into production. While the hit X-Men the Animated Series ended up having little connection to the pilot in terms of look and feel and overall execution, it wouldn't have happened without the pilot and Robocop.
So did it end on like a cliffhanger without the 13th episode, or was it fine?
It was fine. I mean, because like they didn't have like really connected stories, especially
Okay.
in these days. And like even the toy line was only loosely connected to the cartoon series, and the toy line was one of those toy lines where the guns like fired, like you pulled back a little hammer and it would fire on little caps and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. But yeah, and like this is similar to like Rambo. Freedom Force was another toy line from and animated series from stuff that shouldn't have been marketed to kids, but was because 80s. So yeah, Rob, do you remember the cartoon at all?
No, not at all.
All right. Well, we talked about the first sequel. The first sequel, creatively called Robocop 2, was released in May of 1990. Director Paul Verhoeven did not return, instead being replaced by The Empire Strikes Back director Irv Kershner. And while original screenwriters Ed Neumeier and Mike Miner submitted a script, a writer's strike ended their involvement. And instead, legendary comic book writer Frank Miller was the credited writer, although even then his script was drastically altered from his original vision. More fun trivia: to promote the release of Robocop 2, the film partnered with pro wrestling company World Championship Wrestling, at the time owned by Ted Turner and part of his massive media empire. How did this partnership work? Banners on the mats, ads during the show? That would make sense, but no. An entire pay-per-view named after the titular character. Capital Combat: The Return of Robocop, with a running storyline being how was Robocop going to help Sting counteract the Four Horsemen in Lex Luger's attempt to defeat Ric Flair in the world title in a steel cage. A sentence that I assure you is not me having a stroke and actually makes sense.
Yeah, when it comes to all of that, I have no comment about about the championship wrestling element. In But I mean, it makes sense that they would just make a whole episode thing. People are going to be more interested in that, I would say.
It doesn't make sense because they kept portraying RoboCop as real. And you got to remember, like, there's supposed to be a certain suspension of disbelief in pro wrestling that while it's fake. It'd be like having RoboCop show up and be portrayed as real in ER. Like it does not fit in that world, and it feels insulting to the audience to try and say it does. So, like the pay-per-view, which is now available, WWE, who owns the rights to WCW, has a WCW YouTube channel, and they actually just like a month or so ago put the pay-per-view up there, the whole thing, and so like. And I'd seen it before, but I rewatched it, and they're like, like Jim Ross is going like, well, hopefully we can get a word from RoboCop and Sting in their locker room, and then eventually RoboCop comes out, and it's just like this stunt man. It's not Peter Weller in the RoboCop suit, and because of the lighting and stuff, it looks more clearly plastic than it does in the movie. And at one point, Sting gets put into a steel cage that's different than the steel cage Lex Luger and Ric Flair are going to fight in. That was a steel cage for locking a manager in, and the Four Horsemen lock Sting in it. And so then RoboCop bends the bars open to get Sting out, and so dumb and cheesy. I was like,
bad.
what was anyone thinking in that? But highly recommend checking that out. So, Rob, you were asking my thoughts on the second movie. So, the second movie, I think, is what the first movie could have been in different hands. That it ends up being more of a generic. There's still some commentary, but a lot of the best parts of the satire end up coming from the ad breaks and the news stuff, and some of that was left over, like ideas that hadn't been used in the first one. And there's good stuff in it, but it just ends up feeling more like a generic sci-fi action movie from the 80s, or at that point the 1990. It's still good and enjoyable. I have a soft spot in my heart for it, but I understand it doesn't quite live up to everything. Like I would put it up there with like maybe say like Commando or something like that, like where it's more of just like a classic 80s, 90s action movie versus like anything, bordering on special. And but Peter Weller is back for that one, pretty much. Nancy Allen. So it doesn't feel like there's too much of a drop in quality. It's just not quite as good.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely. I would recommend people check it out. I like it. Oh, and there's a connection. Tom Noonan is the main villain in that, and we met Tom in episode 10 in our movie Gloria. He was one of the thugs who go to execute Gloria, and who is the little boy? I'm blanking on the little boy's name.
His real name, I'm forgetting now too.
I'm not. Well, no, his real name is Juan Smith. I'm blanking on the character's name. Anyway, the one who insists he's the man now. Gloria.
Yeah.
Anyway, but one of the thugs early on is played by Tom Noonan, which we mentioned in that episode. He's in RoboCop 2, amongst other things.
Got it. Okay.
So Miller would also write the next in the series, again creatively called RoboCop 3, directed by Fred Dekker of Monster Squad fame, which Tom Noonan is also in. Frank's experience was so poor that he refused to have anything to do with Hollywood for nearly 15 years until Sin City with Robert Rodriguez, based on Miller's comic series of the same name. In addition to the 2 theatrical sequels and the first animated series, there have been 1 live-action series, another cartoon in the late 90s, a mini-series, and a theatrical reboot. There have also been numerous comic books, video games, and other merchandise over the years, and guest appearances in other properties like Mortal Kombat 11. Amazon, who now owns all the rights to RoboCop after acquiring MGM, who had acquired the rights from Orion, is working on both a prequel TV series and a reboot as we speak. If you are in the future, tell us how they turned out. So you'd asked about RoboCop 3. even as a kid, I wasn't excited for RoboCop 3. I I would have said they wussed out. I would have used harsher language as a 10-year-old, that because it was going to be rated PG-13, and I thought that was lame as a 10-year-old. Like, what do you mean it's not going to be R? That's lame. Um, this is RoboCop. And then, so I didn't see it in theaters. I finally saw it on home video and did not like it. I then was like, well, your opinions change. Maybe, I was too into, oh, it's not art, and so, give it a second chance when I was rewatching all the RoboCop movies, last year, and still did not like it. A very, very bad movie. Do not recommend. There's some there are some good production design elements. There's some good acting elements, but the script is trash. There's not much good about the script. The Nancy Allen is back, and some of the other supporting actors are back. Dan O'Hurley is not back. Peter Weller is definitely not back. By this point, he wanted nothing to do with the franchise anymore. But so I've seen bits and pieces. Like, I remember seeing some of the first cartoon when it was on originally, and I think I've seen a little bit of it since. I've also definitely seen that Pride of the X-Men pilot, by the way, and is definitely interesting, especially if you want to hear an Australian Wolverine for some reason. Although in some ways that presaged, yeah, but he doesn't use an Australian accent. I've seen some of the TV series, which was mostly produced for Canada, and I think also maybe showed up on Showtime. The miniseries was definitely Canadian. I've not really seen any of the late 90s cartoon. I've seen the theatrical reboot. That was 2014. It starred Joel Kinnaman in the titular role, and he has more of a sleek design with live movements, kind of like what they were originally going for. It's not that it's bad. I just didn't see much of a point. Like, and some of that's just maybe my bias and how good I think the first one is. Where I'm like, this serves no, like, it doesn't do anything that new, or it doesn't like give new insight into the characters. Like it's just, yeah, I just wasn't sure why it existed. So,
Right.
but I know a number of people who like it. I think my brother likes it, much more than I do. So, but so that's kind of my review of all the RoboCop media I'm familiar with. And there was an attempted reboot before the one they're working on now with director Neil Blomkamp, who did like District 9 and Chappie and Elysium, that fell through. That guy is in, like, his list of projects that didn't end up happening is legendary, like the Halo movie and this, and the RoboCop reboot, a number of other things. But I'll be interested to see where they go with both. The prequel series is supposed to like maybe follow like the old man's rise and how like you kind of get to the culture of the movie at the time
That
of the
could be
movie. But
interesting.
that could be interesting, but
But then it's not RoboCop. Then it's just like they would have to
right.
name it something else.
But it's exploring that world, which I do think they established an interesting world outside of just RoboCop the character, and so we'll see how things go. But so we mentioned. So anything else in that section you guys wanted to touch base on?
Nope, I'm good.
Awesome. All right. So we mentioned RoboCop was the start of Paul Verhoeven's run in Hollywood that would see him make movies that are a mix of hits, classics, and misfires, but films that always got people talking and are all almost all still remembered today for better or worse. They are Total Recall in 1990, Basic Instinct in 1992, Showgirls in 1995, Starship Troopers in 1997, and Hollow Man in 2000. After Hollow Man, he returned to the Netherlands and has since made 3 more movies: Black Book in 2006, Elle in 2015, and Benedetta in 2021. Peter Weller returned to play Robocop in Robocop 2, but declined to return for Robocop 3. He has since voiced the character in video game appearances like 2023's Robocop Rogue City. In addition, he has also appeared in films like 1989's Leviathan, 1991's Naked Lunch, directed by legendary director David Cronenberg, Mighty Aphrodite in 1995, and Star Trek Into Darkness in 2013. He has also appeared in numerous TV shows like 24, Dexter, and Sons of Anarchy. Along with acting in TV shows, he has also directed many TV shows, episodes of TV shows, including the reboots of Hawaii Five-0, MacGyver, and Magnum P.I. Peter also used the money he earned from his success to not work so he could pursue his passion. In 2004, he earned his master's in Roman and Renaissance art from Syracuse, and in 2014, he earned a doctorate in Italian Renaissance art history from UCLA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Smart guy. Yeah, he back in the day when History Channel used to actually show history programs, so like mid to late 2000s, like around the time I think he had his master's, I think he was working on his doctorate. He would show up like and host and be a talking head in programs on the History Channel, which was really cool.
I remember that. Okay.
Yeah. In terms of Verhoeven's career, Total Recall and Starship Troopers are, again, 2 of my favorite films. They pair very nicely with Robocop. Total Recall doesn't have as much of the satire and criticism, but it still explores very interesting themes thanks to Philip K. Dick about the nature of reality and questioning oneself and all that, and is incredibly well done and stylistically fits. Starship Troopers has a lot of that same biting commentary, in part because it's Verhoeven again collaborating with Ed Neumeyer and also the same producer, John Davidson, and is as anti-fascist as Robocop is. Starship Troopers is even more so. It's hugely fascist. Like it's meant to be seen as like a parody of fascist propaganda, essentially. That it is great to me. It still holds up. Love that movie. Basic Instinct is very well done. It's not a me movie. I really don't like Michael Douglas's character in it. He's a parody of, to me, he's the point of parody of rogue cop. Like to me, he should almost be it would be a more interesting story if he was the villain and Sharon Stone's character was the protagonist and she's getting harassed by this guy. But it's interesting. I could see why people like it. They're just parts of it, that turn me off. Showgirls isn't good. It's just insane, and no one acts like a normal human being ever for the entirety of the 2+ hours, and that makes it fascinating to watch every time.
It makes me wonder if Wes Craven was a Verhoeven fan or something, because he references both Showgirl and Basic Instinct within Scream. I mean, that also, could just be like pop culture references, but it is interesting that he mentions 2 in that movie.
Yeah, no, it could be. And then Hollow Man is the last American film that's got Kevin Bacon and Josh Brolin and Elizabeth Shue. And Verhoeven, everybody agrees the script wasn't good. It's pretty generic. The movie starts off pretty good. It just dies in the second act. It just takes too long and gets boring. And by the time things pick back up again in the third act, it just, was too dull. And he was trying to go for more subdued, which is also kind of funny that that is his more subdued, because like for most people it's pretty out there, but I think it would have benefited from being more traditionally Verhoeven out there to make up for the weak script. And for Black Book and and Benedetta, I have not seen, but I do have a copy of Benedetta. I just haven't, with all this, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. So that's a quickie review of the Paul Verhoeven American filmography.
What's next?
Well, we'll get to that in just a minute. Rob, have you seen like any of the like Total Recall or Starship Troopers or even like Basic Instinct or any of those?
Yeah, I've seen them all. Yeah,
even Showgirls.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
Yeah, well, it's horrible, but like I said, like it's horrible in a way that, like, I understand why it's not why Showgirls has a cult following now, these days, because it is so bizarre and over the top and camp. And
you got to put like a screen guard, because I want to throw things at a screen when I see that.
I wouldn't watch it a lot on my own. Again, but I could understand, especially the fun of watching it with other people and being like, "What the hell," and getting into it that way. So, who is Rob? You know who is a big fan of Showgirls? Ariana Grande.
I'm sure. Yeah.
That she like not long ago recreated on her Instagram a whole scene from it with one of her friends.
Makes sense.
That was what 1987 in the present thought of the film, and you've already heard what we think, but we want to know what you think. Tell us all the things we got right, all the things we got totally wrong, and everything in between. You can do that in the comments if the platform you listen to us allows comments. If not, you can do that on social media. We are at Savage Movie Night on Instagram and Facebook. Follow us there to stay up to date on the latest with the show, and drop in the comments to share your thoughts. Now that we have regained our humanity, save Detroit, and remove the evil executive from OCP, it's time to look at what's next. And what's next, we have to bridge the generational divide. See things from the other person's eyes and get a little freaky, because we are talking all about the 2003 classic Freaky Friday starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan. Freaky Friday is available to stream on Disney Plus and to rent or purchase digitally from Apple, Amazon, Fandango at Home, and Microsoft. If you're more into old-fashioned physical media, you can find it on Blu-ray, DVD, or even VHS. But however you found it, watch it, and come right back here next month to listen to us talk all about it. Thanks so much to our editor, Javi, and the entire Savage Content team. Thanks so much to my co-hosts, Rob and Kristen. Thanks so much to our sponsor, Jazzology with Laura Jenkins. And most importantly, thanks so much to all of you for listening. Please give us 5 stars and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a like, a follow, ring the bell, drop into the comments, all the good YouTube things. I've been your host, Adam, and we'll see you next time on the Savage Movie Night Podcast.